Hello there, and welcome again to another session of Marketing Cafe Live. We're here with a great topic today. We've got a great guest in the Marketing Cafe Live, one of our most famous baristas that we have. It's Felecia Ward, and Felecia Ward is an extraordinarily experienced marketer, communication specialist. She's worked in some of the largest boardrooms throughout the country. She is based in the United States, and she's worked with companies of all sizes. And now she works with businesses and entrepreneurs to help them take their concepts, build strategy, build their communication around it. She's absolutely amazing. And she's here today to talk about strategy with it comes to perseverance. And perseverance, for sure, is one of the most important things that any business owner, entrepreneur, leader needs to have. So this is going to be so valuable for us. I'm Michael K. Reynolds, and you can find me at globalstudio.com and learn all about what it is that I do. But let's get into meeting our guest today, which is Felecia Ward. Felecia Ward, welcome to Marketing Cafe Live. So great to see you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for having me.
So Felecia, tell us a little bit about if people listen to this and they agree with me that you're one of the brightest people that I've met, you've got tremendous passion, and they say, how can I connect with Felecia? I've got your website address there, but what is it that your business does and how do you help people?
I specifically work with entrepreneurs. I help them develop strategic brand assets and help build brand equity and help promote their business out in the marketplace with editors, media, social media, and with other companies when trying to attain corporate clients. So I kind of run the gamut, but I specialize working with entrepreneurs because I have a special place in my heart for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, me too. I love entrepreneurs, and it's the reason that I shifted my business model is I had this kind of larger agency, and I never got to work directly with the entrepreneurs anymore. I had account reps, and it kind of took all the fun because for me, entrepreneur is a French word that means crazy person that likes to work all the time. And I love entrepreneurs because you can share an idea with them and they go with it. They don't put it into 18 committees and they just hear a great idea and they can move forward. Aren't they fun to work with?
Definitely. They make executive decisions on a daily basis. My father was an entrepreneur. Members of my family were entrepreneurs. So I grew up seeing people work in the corporate have a corporate mindset and get jobs and then transition out into entrepreneurship. And I got to see the growth pains and things that happen. So when you're working with entrepreneurs, they are definitely a special group of people. They're extremely resilient, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about perseverance as an actual asset as part of your core business strategy.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you do have different types of entrepreneurs. You have those kinds of entrepreneurs that really didn't go for formal education. They just kind of were doing entrepreneur type of things since the beginning of their time, and they jump right into it. And then you have people like you're talking about who have been in the corporate world for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then they go into this, and it can be a bit of a shock for them. It's a total different kind of cultural way. I know that I probably have greater challenges with those who have been in the corporate world for 20 years than I do those who have been just basically entrepreneurs from the beginning.
That is so true. I have, as you said, I have had people in my family who run like a small store, and they actually get it when you're trying to help them and get them actual assets and find out what marketing and advert. They go with the flow because it's just another thing. But when they come from the corporate level, it's always, as you said, a culture shock to have everything removed and realize it's just you. And without that corporate moniker, it does not open up doors for you. You have to actually create new brand assets and market yourself. And most people do not have that skill set. And they figure that because they have the education, they have the expertise, they have a great service product, that they're going to be able to get out there and hit the ground running. And they hit a brick wall when they find out that they are now a supplier. They are just another person and a cog in the wheel that has to go to the back and fill out an application as a vendor. And it can be deflating for a lot of people. And then once they find out all the things that they need to do, it can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah, and I know for me that I kind of shriveled on the vine in a corporate environment because it was, you come up with an idea and you're really fired up about it. And, typically I'm ready to, let's get those things rolling. And then a month goes by and 2 months come by and then 3 months come by. And then it's the idea of the CEO. And all of a sudden everybody's on board. So it's a different world. They're both have their great values and pieces with it. Now, you had many different topics that you could have chose and taught from. You have so many different layers of expertise. The very first one that you wanted to speak about in the Marketing Cafe is the power of perseverance. Tell me why this is so important for you.
It's extremely important. I try to talk about this as much as possible because perseverance actually is something that's not discussed in a general market. For the most part, everyone talks about living your best life, achieving the dream, getting results, becoming a boss. And what people don't talk about are the number of hours that it takes, the resilience that it requires, how you're going to be alone for most of the time, how you're going to have to forego instant gratification and do a lot of things yourself, and how you don't have a team of people to do that. And so even if you had a team, you still are putting in double the hours, but you have to remember in terms of your mindset, you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for others, you're doing it for yourself. So yes, you're going to have to work twice as hard, but perseverance is a muscle. And what you find out is that on your worst days, that's when people need the most help. And if no one's ever told you, you have to be able to be resilient. You're going to have to change your mindset and know results are not what you need to focus in on. You need to focus in on incremental progress, making sure that every week that you're looking back on what you have achieved so that you have that motivation internally to move forward. And for the most part, so many people are used to attaboys outside, and they don't realize that now is a time that you're going to have to self-motivate. So that's all part of having that core perseverance mindset and looking bigger beyond yourself and also looking deep within yourself. You're having to do a duality. And I say that because internally, you're going to have to build that fortitude. And that only comes from making mistakes, from making the wrong decisions, from things not happening overnight, and being deflated and having to get up and start all over again. And you have to continuously do that without someone else telling you you're doing a great job. So people don't discuss that, and a lot of people quit so early on, or they burn out like a rocket. They have this great start, and then where did all the passion go? Because they see how hard and how difficult it is. And I want to be one of those people, the champion people, to tell them keep growing. Instead of telling people keep going, I tell people to keep growing. And that's the mindset that you have to have. And then externally, in terms of perseverance, you need to know that while other people are out there formulating all kinds of great strategies that get you these great results, that you have to look at yourself and look at beyond what it is that you initially started to do. And we're a little older, Michael, so we know the difference when you start out. You say, I'm going to be a doctor or whatever it is, and then you end up doing a whole bunch of other things. And I tell interns, when I tell people that work with me, and what I tell other business owners is to look at the broader spectrum. So take my career, for instance. I've worked in marketing, I've worked in advertising, I've worked in PR, and overall, that's all marketing communications. Well, how did that happen? It's because I was laid off 4 times. I had to basically, instead of starting over in each individual field, but what was so helpful to me was that I had a very good mentor who let me know is that what is your overall overarching goal? What's your overarching goal? If you want to stay in marketing communications, learn all of marketing communications. What a lot of people do is they say, I'm going to be a data analyst. And they only focus in on that. They don't look at all the other things within research and everything else. Have a broad spectrum of all the different careers that you see yourself within. Learn about those other careers, because I can tell you, A quick story. When I worked in an advertising agency, the first thing I learned was not to work on one specific type of accounts. The king of accounts when I first started in advertising was hotels, car dealerships, brand name things like that. But what happens is when the market changes or they go to a different agency, they leave the agency, and that person specialized working for that particular car dealership or working for that one healthcare company, and now they're not of use to the agency, and they're let go. So what you have to do is, through everything else, diversify your career set, diversify your mindset, and be aware that there are times that you might have to do other things that are on the fringe of what it is that you want to do. But later on, I call them lily pads. I'm very, very grateful that I made sure that I learned about how to copyright, how to put an ad together, to be at a photo shoot, to learn what goes on behind the scenes, to host a television show, so that you can actually be more marketable to yourself. And also externally, if you have to get a job on the side, you're very marketable. And when the markets change, because things change all the time, you don't have to worry. And the other thing it does is it helps people from having this terrible imposter syndrome. You become qualified in a lot of different things. It bolsters your self-esteem. And if things aren't working over here, they might be working over there. Go try it and come back and regroup.
All right. So a lot of things there. There were a few things that I wanted to unpack. Two big points that you made there. It started off with saying perseverance is a muscle. And what we're actually going to be talking about is strategies in how you can develop more perseverance. Some people feel you're born with it. You either have it or you don't. And we're here to tell you that, yeah, there's some core ways that you were raised in that could give you really a head start, and that you actually have. You're used to persevering. You were surrounded by people that persevered. That really gives you a head start. But even so, you can work this muscle. You can improve. There's techniques you can use, because you have to have perseverance. And in my experience working with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, probably the number one trait, even more than passion, is perseverance. Is that I sense in entrepreneurs, they're just not going to give up. They're going to keep pushing. They're going to keep moving. And you have to, because you are constantly hit up with obstacles. And that's why a lot of times I'll work with someone who has been in corporate for 15 years or 20 years, and they say, hey, I need to do something while I'm looking for a job. And for me, that is a recipe for failure, because they're not becoming a new business. They're trying to get some cash in between. And then I also listen for signs where real early on, little things are they're to them, they're big chasms, as opposed to, no, that's just a little bump. So that's the thing, is that you have to have perseverance. I believe it's the number one quality that you have to have. The second thing that you shared in talking about perseverance is that it's really important when picking up these different things. Is you mentioned that someone comes from a corporate or a job for so many times. There's actually structures in place for affirmation, like, Felecia, you've done a great job, or I really like this report. And they teach, you got to give people positive feedback, and all of a sudden you're sitting in this office by yourself, and the affirmations, they got to come from yourself. There's self-affirmation, but then there's this really challenging dichotomy, and we're always fighting this, especially hard times, difficult times. The difference between self-affirmation, like, Michael, you've got this, hang in there, you've done it before, you can do it again, and self-delusion, and really understanding the difference between those two, and always kind of coming back and saying, am I affirming myself? Is this perseverance, or am I just deluded?
That is such a great point about the delusion. Well, one of the things that I advocate for, so that you're not delusional, is the focus on your professional development, so that you're constantly being an eternal learner. And when you start a new course to learn something new, as opposed to hiring someone to just do it for you, it's very humbling. And you meet people from all different walks of life. And what you all have in common is that none of you know this subject matter. and you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to take notes. It's humbling in a sense, but it's also very gratifying when you see the progress that you're making in a particular course. So every quarter, I sign up for a particular course that's going to add to my business and also add to my mindset. So I divide things up that way so that I'm constantly learning something new. And that makes you humble as a person because you have to ask questions. You have to basically wave the white flag when you're like, I need help. I need help. And the only way you're going to get better is to learn constantly, to learn what's going on within your own industry and find out. You don't have to do everything, but core business strategies that you might have known for 20 years, you need to freshen up and find out what the people are doing now. What's the terminology? Like when I started out and PR and crisis management was my specialty, we called it public relations. Now it's reputation management. It's semantics. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Guess what? If I was to go to look for a client and I said, I'm really great at, crisis PR, and they're like, PR, what's like, how old are you? So you can put yourself kind of out of step with what's going on. And I think that if you humble yourself and realize there's always something and someone that you can learn from. And one of the beauties of the Marketing Cafe is because it is an information exchange. I learn something in every Marketing Cafe, and that hopefully they're learning from me. And that continuum is like the recycling of information, and the share of information keeps it fresh. It keeps your mind open to new possibilities and new opportunities. And that's the only way you can make sure that you're not just constantly self-affirming.
Absolutely. And so we're going to get into 3 actually kind of strategies for building perseverance, but getting into this idea of, the difference between self-affirmation, because you really have to, a lot of times it looks like, it's kind of foggy. I don't know what's there, but you got to get through it. You have to be able to affirm yourself and kind of fight through that. A lot of times we take on projects where it's a stretch for us and we're not exactly sure how we're going to get there, but we have confidence that we found our way before. But this idea of delusion, because you do have this kind of brand of business owners that are like, no, I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm just going to keep moving forward. I'm going to have the blinders and move forward. And that's not what we're advocating. We're advocating always listening, always learning, always growing. But at the same token, encouraging yourself along the way. And for me, one of the best strategies for not suffering from self-delusion is to have a group of fellow people who are fellow colleagues, like we have in the Marketing Cafe with over 50 amazing baristas and stuff, who love us and trust us enough to give us honest feedback. So these are not our competitors. They're not our clients. They're not our customers. They're not our employees, because sometimes we have difficult questions but if you have some people you can get together, have coffee with, or meet on a regular basis, share what's on your heart, what's driving you, and then trust them to give you really good feedback, and then listen to it. And that's really the only way that I survived, because I definitely had a lot of self-delusion going on in the beginning of the days. And in some degree, that perseverance, you're just on the brink of self-delusion. You almost have to push it right to the limit, because a lot of times things look kind of hopeless. And if I think of all the times where I would have quit because something looked hopeless, I wouldn't have made it past the first year, and I'm now 23 years plus. All right, well, let's get into what you want to share with us, strategies and tactics, the power of perseverance. What's your first recommendation?
The very first, what you first initially mentioned was joining a like-minded group. For instance, I belong to a Facebook group that holds you accountable. So they're all business owners and all different types of businesses, not one particular industry. And it's all about putting a plan together of what it is that you say that you need to do, and holding you accountable by making sure that you have workflows, you have steps that are in place, that it's realistic, that your time management is so important. Like, what are you doing with your time what's the plan to reach this? And what is the actual steps that need to be taken? And instead of looking at a major big project that you have to do, to break things down into small, I call it snackable content or snackable steps, that you're going to follow. If you just say, hey, I'm going to start a Facebook page. Well, today I just need to do the art covers and, register the sites. And then maybe I have 15 minutes later, maybe I can go ahead and do my profile. And by the Tuesday, you've registered in 5 places. That's something that's actually doable, as opposed to saying I'm going to be on 9 platforms and do all these crazy things. And being accountable within a Facebook group, you can share the challenges, because when you have victories and when you have challenges, you have no one to share them with when you're an entrepreneur, and that's so important. As you said, you're told that you're doing a great job, and maybe have you tried this? Have you tried that? Or that won't work. That doesn't sound realistic to the group. And you go, okay, let me rethink that. And here's some strategies that I've tried. Try this or try that. And it's also a place where you can say, you know what, I really messed up. I really messed up on this. And you know what the people in the group will say? Let's develop a strategy or a plan to help get you back on track. And
yeah, so this is so key, is this idea of community, and whether, the technology doesn't matter as much, whether it's a Facebook group, whether Facebook groups are around, who knows, phones, getting together for coffee, different kind of connections that you can do. The key is you're connecting with other people and that you're able to share. And that's why so much, if you end up signing up for a course or a mentorship program, you really want to have that community where you're able to share and get back, and there's interactions. Now, you speak about developing a personal core strategy as kind of the starting point for all of this. Explain what you mean.
I found that so many people have a very specific thing that they're interested in doing, and they really haven't thought about the fact that they have to expand that thought. That it's like hitting a target on the dartboard. You're looking to make sure you hit that bullseye. And so many people are laser focused on trying to achieve that it's self-defeating if they don't make it. And it's better to broaden what it is that you're looking to do and achieve for yourself, so that you can see the periphery. You're just trying to get on the board. Because you're starting out and you're brand new, let's just shoot for the board. We'll worry about the bullseye later, and think about all those different peripheral things that you could do, different services that you might offer, different talents that you might have, things that you might be able that are, I call it adjacent to what it is your major goal is. And I think that's really important for your, as a core strategy, to look at all those different things. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a client that was looking to get into broadcasting, and they had a podcast and they were doing so well. And their whole focal point was, I want to be on TV. I want to be on TV. And you have to start looking at the fact that, listen, why don't you do some YouTubes? Why don't you start doing some local segments? Why don't you do a little freelance? There's other things let's make a list of what's possible that can get you closer to what it is that you want to do, without constantly shooting and, the target in the center target and not reaching what your goal. And eventually they ended up on television. And they said that they would have given up if they only had just, how many rejections and things that you have to go through. And I think, especially the millennials, they're not really taught that. They're thinking if they don't get that they failed, whatever that specific thing is. And broadening your mindset to realize that there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's essentially what it is. And people don't actually put together a strategy of what those things are, what's required to do those things, and what's the game plan, and to reach out to other people who have taken a different route to get to what you're looking to achieve. Not everyone, most entrepreneurs now that are very successful, they'll tell you that they had all kinds of odd jobs. They had all these different things that have happened. That's most successful people, but that's not really talked about until a person is famous and they become a millionaire. Then all of a sudden everyone's E.F. Hutton and they want to hear, oh, they worked at this coffee shop and they did that. But when they were doing it, they would dare do it. And, you have to have conversations with yourself to say, what things are you willing to do to try to get closer to what it is that you're looking to achieve. And you mentioned oftentimes you might have to take a part-time job for extra cash, but you're not trying to take the job for extra cash because that's going to be your new focal point. It's just you're trying to stay in the game and you want to stay afloat, and you're not being delusional that, oh yeah, somewhere $10,000 is going to come or $1 million is going to come. You're being realistic in your goal, And maybe the part-time job that you take, maybe it's something adjacent to something that you already do. Okay, if you're a great copywriter, you might have to take a freelance job at a magazine. You might write for a local paper, but it's still writing. It's still going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, it's so good. And I actually coach people. Sometimes it's better to do something totally unattached to what you're trying to do during the daytime. So, I worked banquets when I first started my business in 1998 in the evening time. So I worked my business in the daytime. In the evening, I worked banquets, and I loved it because I didn't have to think. Other
Yeah.
people were selling the jobs. I just showed up, polished some silverware, filled some champagne glasses, and got paid pretty well. And it really helped with the business. But several things that you shared in here. I love this idea of you don't need to hit the bullseye. You want to hit the board. And too many people get frozen with this idea of I can't hit the bullseye, I don't want to do it. And that it just delays, delays, delays. But the other side of it is you hear a lot of people telling you, just do it, just do it. The Nike strategy, just do it. And what I do share with people is just do it, dot, 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 right. Because it doesn't take that much extra time or effort or research to do it right. And if you do it right from the beginning, then you're not all over the place. And so this idea of just close your eyes and just jump, no, you might want to see if there's some water down there. But I love the idea of we're not trying to hit the bullseye. And it may be we don't even want to hit the bullseye because as entrepreneurs, we learn that our target's in the outer ring. And we only do that by experimenting with that and being, actually putting things in practice. The other piece of this personal core strategy is that you see people have vanity goals and then they have service goals. And I know right away, for instance, if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to get on television, for me, that's a tactic. And as opposed to, well, why are we getting on? Well, because I want to reach a bunch of people, and being open to the idea that your core strategy is, I want to serve people with teaching them yoga, or I want to serve people with teaching them a new way of doing things, a new way of doing business or accounting. And that becomes part of the personal core strategy that I'm going to serve them. Perseverance is, maybe I didn't get on television, but I did get on a real broadcast online, or I was able to get a really big email track, or it took longer than I thought. But the people, for me, I love this, developing a personal core strategy is my mission is to help people, small business owners, better with their books. So many of them don't get the help they need. Or my mission is to cook the most amazing croissants. And that becomes the personal core strategy. And it also is very important. I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity along the way at any point. And that is what drives people through the fog in really difficult times to get to the other side. So worrying about, oh yeah, I got to use this tactic or that, or these people say, none of that matters as much as developing the personal core strategy. All right, we're talking about the power of perseverance. The first one was developing a personal core strategy. You mentioned the next one to be build a perseverance mindset.
Oh, now this is what changed things for me, is that your mindset was the first thing I needed to change. I thought that might have been skill set and other things. It was the mindset that you're now an entrepreneur, and what that actually means is that you're wearing all the hats. And what was really focal point for me in that mindset change was taking mindset courses of there's an organization called WBEX. And if you heard of Gary Vee and other people that are like that, mindset coaches have mindset coaches. And one of the things they had to do was like, guess what? You need to get into some mindset coaching to talk about what your original goal was, what was your original passion, and what are your roadblocks, and what's holding you back from yourself. There's other things that are external, but working on your own internal roadblocks and what was keeping you back. And a lot of it had to do with what you talked about, coming from a corporate environment and being so structured. I was used to doing emergency press conferences, and every single word I said was pursed. Okay. And getting to the point where people like, that's not authentic out in the entrepreneur world. You have to just be able to be yourself, go off script and say something. When I was used to writing talking points, writing speeches, and I was worried that I wasn't going to look as or be perceived as professional. That was an internal mindset change that I had to make for myself, that I've been doing this for a long time. So just what you said, just do it, but do it right, and do it with heart, and measure twice, cut once. I had to start practicing going live, putting myself out there, and all the internal problems that you have and hangups internally that you have about that and being an entrepreneur versus being this professional person. I had to overcome those things. And working on your internal problems, it's so key to why you're not doing certain things. And oftentimes entrepreneurs self-sabotage. And so having that change in your mindset and realizing that what's going on with me. Okay, having that time to yourself, and I do what's called your daily 3 things that help put you in a better space, and whether that's meditation, reading your Bible, taking time to yourself to basically connect better with your own internal dialogues that you have. One of my favorite quotes is that all men's problems stem from their inability to sit in a room alone, and that is so key, because if you're a reflective person, you don't have problems with it. If you're a person that's used to being busy all the time, the silence can be deafening for some people. And I find that that's why so many people have different issues with a change, because people don't like to go through change because they have to address yourself. Before you do something, you have an internal dialogue with yourself. So checking in with yourself and your mindset, and whether or not you have, great sleep, great mental health, a good attitude. Are you being humble? Are you being giving? Are you investing in yourself? Those are all things that I had to reprogram, but on a level of being an entrepreneur. It was a completely new venture, but it was an old venture because I'd seen my father do it. I'd seen family members who have all been entrepreneurs, but that was their goal. That was not my original goal. My original goal was to, have a corner office and do certain things. And once I achieved that, it's like, oh, now what? So it's more personable for yourself. And what you mentioned about your core, as a part of a core value, developing for yourself what your core values and your integrity is as a person, and realizing that you have to be okay with that before you put out your brand, before you put out your brand promise. You have to be okay with yourself. And that's all starts from your internal dialogue and having that perseverance mindset, that I'm going to change my mindset and I will achieve certain things, and having that dialogue within.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about any fog, any storm, any weather. You may not be able to see anything out there, but that internal compass of your integrity will always guide you in those most difficult ways. And, the interesting thing is, when people hear the word perseverance, the first thing they think of is hard, brittle steel. I'm going to do this no matter what. And actually, hopefully what you're hearing from us is perseverance is actually very flexible. It's growth oriented, it's change oriented, it's development oriented, because you're constantly having to tack the sails, depending on what's out there. So it's not, just going in circles and getting nowhere, but it's constantly making these adjustments to the winds, different things that are happening, and getting back to building that perseverance mindset. There was this old game many years ago for kids, which was this kind of magnet football game, and they had all these players on there, and you'd plug the electric in, and then all these players would move in. It was completely silly if you saw it now compared to the games but we would play this for an hour. We'd line them up. But what would happen is one of these players, little plastic players, would go, and then it would get stuck in the side of the game, and it would just be stuck there. And you had to pick it up and move it in order for the game to continue. And this is what we're talking about, having others in your life to help you to sometimes reach in and pick up, Michael, you think you're persevering, but you're just stuck, and to be lifted, and then you turned. And this is where that mindset comes in, being open to learning new things, hearing from others, and growing, and having this mindset of perseverance, that on the inner core, I will never sacrifice my integrity, which is the compass that we have. But on the outer core, I'm going to be open to learning new ways that I can grow and develop. Because here's the thing, the person that starts your business isn't good enough to finish your business. That
Right.
person has to grow, get stronger, get faster. And so you have to be constantly growing. All right. So we're talking about the power of perseverance. And then our last major point that you have for us is so important: invest in yourself.
So that to that point, professional development, getting a mentor, having a life coach. Those are the three things that I highly recommend. The professional development, taking the courses, finding out what's new, and learning how to do things for yourself before you train other people to do it or pay someone else to do it. You have to have that understanding. And the mentorship of having someone that's aspirational, that's been where you've been, and that can actually give you a different perspective as to where you are and where you're looking to go. And then finally, I really think it's really important that when you're investing in yourself, that you're making sure that you have a life coach. And people don't talk about the how hard and difficult it is to create life work balance when you're an entrepreneur, because you're working additional hours, you're doing additional things, because you're not just in your office, you're having to do other things. So that life work balance of when are the meals going to be cooked? When are you going grocery shopping? When are you washing clothes? When do you have your doctor's appointments? Those things need to be on a calendar. And that has to be part of a priority. But what often happens is that people prioritize their business over everything else and things suffer. So when you're starting out as part of that perseverance, the only way you're going to figure out what's a priority in your life is to have a time management plan. By having that time management to find out what time do you actually have, not what time you think you have, but the time you actually have to devote to certain things. You have to be realistic and track that. And if it's the tomato stopper that you're doing for every 30 minutes, you're doing time blocking to find out how much time you actually have to devote to something. When you have that work-life balance, you get sleep, you drink water, you meet with your family, you're able to go to dinner, your business is able to run sometimes when you're not there. Those are all key things, and making sure you have good mental health and having a life coach to check in on you to say, how is it going? And the first thing as an entrepreneur, you want to start talking about your business, and you're like, no, how are you doing? And you have to go, oh, me? And that was something that I found that has been very instrumental and very helpful, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and this idea of a life coach, or again other formats, or having a group of people you meet with, and you kind of speak truth into each other's lives, is so valuable, because so many times entrepreneurs, you'll hear them say, well, my spouse just isn't supportive. They just don't understand the business. They just don't get it. And the answer is no, they don't, because they're not doing it all day long. And they've got other things that they're focusing on that they need to put their full attention. So for you to expect them at any moment to be able to jump in the middle of, okay, I got this vendor that's slow, I've got this client that's, and it's just can be noise. And then also remember, in many ways, that can affect them negatively if you're having problems and issues, because it could mean, oh, by the way, you're not getting a check from me this month because things are slow. So they don't want to hear it. It's natural for them. It almost sounds like it's like the bee sting. And so having someone who can come alongside you, who can just look at it objectively, they're not going to be suffering the pain that your family or spouse is if there's something big, and they can speak at it without kind of that emotion, but really give you some guidance. Now, that investing in yourself is, here's the thing: is we start business, and it always happens with this, and you say to yourself, if I could only reach this level, and you're saying that in your first year, I will be content forever. one of the biggest lies, because 6 months in, 1 year in, you're making more than you ever thought was possible, and you're already looking for the next goals and the next growth, and you're getting. So the point is perseverance. You have to grow those skills because the challenges get greater, the obstacles get greater, things happen in life that are always coming in. And so investing in yourself, and we can talk about all different ways that you would invest in yourself, but specifically invest in perseverance like it's a muscle, because a good friend of mine says, hey, entrepreneurs are athletes and they need to take care of themselves. They need to take care, they need to make sure they have energy, they need to make sure they have rest, they need to make sure that their mind is sharp, and they need to make sure that their perseverance muscle is nice and strong and ready. And so it's constantly thinking of ways, because one of the other things that happen is over the time span is things that would really drive you in the beginning, like, oh, it's brand new, look, my business card. Okay, that doesn't drive you 3 years in. It's like, okay, yeah, the business cards are in, okay, great, let's move on.
True.
And so you constantly have to be working on that perseverance muscle. And I love the way that you shared that. And so any concluding thoughts on the power of perseverance before we wrap up our session here? And this has been great, Felecia.
Oh, great. One of the things that I have learned over the years is that you always have to remember, it's a quote I tell people, no one gets through this life unscathed. Keep that in mind when you're having to actually exercise the muscle of perseverance. People see people having these great lives, but no one goes through life unscathed. People have sicknesses, people die, there's car accidents, businesses fail. And as long as you know that you're trying to do the best that you can do at the time that you're doing it with the information that you have, keep growing. Keep growing as an entrepreneur. Don't give up, and make sure you have that fortitude that you say, I will move forward. You will move forward, and understand that no one goes through life unscathed. Things may have not happened to you yet, but they will. So plan for that. And there's no way you can really plan, but keep it in the back of your mind that things happen to everybody. And I think people feel so alone when things are happening specifically to them, that they think that, this is like an anomaly. And no, it's not. It's just that it's part of what's going on. It's part of life. And I just want to encourage people that this too shall pass. And that's the good things, the bad things, the slow things. And if you just have to keep growing in life, because life only goes in one direction, it goes forward. We can't go back. You can't stop life. It moves forward. So to have that mindset that in order to reach the end, to reach the goals that we want to achieve, to get better and grow as a person, you're going to have to exercise that muscle of perseverance.
So important. And I think it gets back to this idea of mindset, is that there's some entrepreneurs that say, oh no, what now? And others say, hey, what's next? And if you can get in the mindset that there's always going to be something new around the horizon, and that's part of your great and grand adventure, that you go, okay, what's next? We're ready. Let's flex this perseverance muscle. Let's show them what we got. Well, this has been fantastic. And the good news, Felecia, for all of those who've caught the end of this or at different points, this is going to be available in the Marketing Cafe Academy. And so at any time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we have many of these sessions, other teachings, and you can get signed up for that in the marketingcafe.club. You'll see the link there to the Marketing Cafe Academy, totally free. It's part of our Marketing Cafe suite of things that we do. We've got a lot of really great teachings in there. And of course, I knew it. You were going to be amazing, and you are, Felecia. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, so this concludes our session here of the Marketing Cafe Live, talking about the power of perseverance. And again, I'm Michael K. Reynolds. You can find me at globalstudio.com. And we're so glad that you joined us here. And we hope that we'll see you every week when we do this again here in the Marketing Cafe Live. Thank you for joining us. This has been The Power of Perseverance.